are back, and we're going to get heavy into cybersecurity in a moment. I mean, people have to realize the guy that they were setting up for this job, he was the chief of cybersecurity. There had not been a czar created, and there had not been an office created. That was all just announced this Friday. But the guy that they were going to give the job to resigned with a blunt letter to Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano. We're going to get into that big time coming up. Rod Beckstrom said, no, this is against the Constitution and Bill of Rights. I'm not going to spy on everybody. And they're already doing that. And that's why when Obama tells you at the end of his speech, don't worry, we're not going to surveil the American public. Everyone's going to have their privacy. You don't have your privacy right now. Everything you do on your internet and your cell phone right now, folks, is tracked, traced, and databased. I promise you that. We're going to show you in a moment. All right, let's go back to Ken in Dallas so we can finally make his point. Go ahead, Ken. What's the point?
Hey, Jason.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know you got another caller, so I'm going to try to make this real quick. I just had a little point about the chemtrails to think about. I've been studying it for about a year. And if you look at the globalists' own documents and the government patents, they say in them that they're putting reflectivity materials up there in the upper levels of the atmosphere to reflect the heat. And whether global warming is true or not, apparently they believe that it is true. They're putting it up there, and my idea just kind of goes like this. George Bush comes into office, and he is against global warming. He says it doesn't exist, too, because he's got friends, the oil buddies, that are into it, so he has a private meeting with them, and they decide through NATO to spray all the nations to mitigate global warming.
Here's what I got to disagree with you, Ken, and I thank you for the call. Just because they admit, and they do admit, the Obama administration has come out and said, to combat global warming, we may shoot pollutants into the upper atmosphere to reflect the sun's rays. That's not what it's for. Okay, it's not to combat global warming. Surely it is reflecting the sun's rays, giving us less vitamin D, less sunlight, the essence of life on all of Earth into our bodies. That's for sure. But then you look at what's in there, and it's aluminum oxide, it's barium, it's other heavy metals. Yes, it is, I guess the ingredients, if you will, of what they use for weather modification. But just the fact that they won't tell you what it's really for, that it's part of some quote-unquote secret NASA program, and that, the same things we hear from the CFR on this from the 90s into the 2000s into a report last year is exactly what this administration is now parroting. Should let you know that this has nothing to do with global warming. This has to do with the illusion that you need to pay a carbon tax, okay? And that's spinning out of control. Nancy Pelosi over in China just this week, let me read you the quote, and it was all about climate change because everybody on Earth has to do their part, and you're going to pay your carbon tax. And what do you think the emission standards mean? I had somebody call into my show on Thursday or Friday from Harley Davidson saying, every Harley Davidson on the road is now street illegal. And it will cost literally, thousands, if not tens of thousands, to fix that. And it's not cost effective for the bikes. So what are they going to do? Put Harley Davidson and others out of business? It's out of control. Pelosi said, we have so much room for improvement. Every aspect of our lives must be subjugated to inventory. Meanwhile, in this speech, Barack Obama says that all of our medical records are going to be digitized. That's what this smart grid he talks about, this Satan grid, is for. It's to track, trace, and database us further, but really build the infrastructure so that human beings' eyes are on a lot more of this data. See, right now they take it all, and we're going to represent that in a minute. It came out on Keith Olbermann. The court case, which is still being heard, is Hepting versus AT&T. Hepting versus AT&T. And he says, don't worry, we're not going to track anything. They're already doing it. But now they're going to have people to actually go through and look at the information. See, before it would go through Promise software or Carnivore software, look for keywords and phrases and put you into certain categories. But they don't have the manpower to literally look and spy on everybody. But that's what they're trying to build. All right, let's go to Rodney in Texas. Rodney, you're on the line.
Yes, how you doing, Jason?
Good.
Yeah, and this is kind of in harmony with what Alex called in about the control freakishness of the police officers. Mm-hmm. I was just looking at an article in the newspaper, and it was talking about the astronomical numbers of police officers who were actually killing each other via friendly fire. That's what they call it. Mm-hmm. And Alex had talked about this about 3 or 4 years ago, but I guess now it's just starting with the internet, the exposure starting to make a lot of the newspapers, particularly in New York. I mean, they've had a rash of police officers kill their own buddies.
Well, that happens a lot in New York because there's an extent. Whenever you have a big city like New York or Los Angeles or, even Austin, Texas, you're going to have a certain amount of corruption. And cops that think they are above the law, they're going to help with the drug running. They're going to help with the kickbacks. And when one lone cop says, hey, I'm going to blow the whistle, they blow the back of his head off.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, let me ask you this. And the Boston Herald newspaper, the mayor of Boston, said no to the issuance of M16s to all the police officers there, and he's saying that he doesn't think it's a good idea, and I agree with him because the officers can't control shooting their normal sidearms there. Why would you want to take and put an M16?
Meanwhile, many of them are already being outfitted in Boston in the subway stations, at the train stations. We had another caller this week complaining about that and saying he couldn't believe how much it had been militarized since he'd been to New York. Remember, he didn't have this right after 9/11 like we did in New York. It's been incremental, and he said, it got worse and worse and worse, and now it's just unbelievable. It is literally cops in black uniforms with machine guns, automatic weapons. I thank you for the call, Rodney. And before I forget, about 3 hours ago, when I was driving down East Ben White Boulevard, there must have been some training exercise going down, but there were 6 Black Hawk helicopters riding pretty low. I mean, enough so not only did I notice them, but they were low enough where it was maybe 200-300 feet in the air. And I know, it doesn't exist, Jason. They told me black helicopters don't exist. Then they admit to them. Now they just don't exist when I see them. See, they could be running a training exercise, and they do exist. But when I talk about them, black helicopters, they don't exist. I must have had some kind of schizophrenic paranoia trip when I was driving down the highway. But I'm sure if there was anybody out there today, remember, about 150, I saw these going right over 290, 71 there. You couldn't miss it. It was over before the Montopolis and Burleson Road exits. And it was just unbelievable to me. I'm thinking to myself, well, is this a military training exercise? I kept watching them as they went. It looked like they were lowering down and maybe circling. I don't know. But I'm just not comfortable with cops in black uniforms and automatic weapons and black helicopters, flying around the area. It looks a little too much like the Eminem video Mosh of a complete and total police state here at home for my liking. Let's go to Issa in New York City. Issa, you're on the line.
Yo, Bermas, we love you in New York City, man. Think you're the best thing to sliced bread, straight up. My girlfriend loves you more than AJ. I'm a big AJ fan now. And, man, we just love you. I wanted to tell you a story. My friend was walking home. My pop, his girlfriend didn't know he was plain clothes. I guess
Issa, I want to take your call, but you're breaking up too much, man. It sounded like a good one. Talking about something with plainclothes officers. That's about all I could hear. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to play this other clip. Again, out of Austin, this making national news of this woman. Well, she just can't afford health insurance for her kids anymore. She's a realtor. Things aren't selling. She's living in one of her homes, one of the ones she's trying to sell, and she just had to give up the medical benefits for the children. Well, what happens? Don't worry. It's the government medical vans with funky colors on the outside to help. And this is where you're going to have your mobile vaccination center. This is where they're going to put your children on Ritalin. This is where they're going to really drug the masses as they can't pay for it. And they'll act like, we're helping you. There'll be a big drive out there. You're going to want to go, just like you're going to want to go to the FEMA camps because they're going to have nice little play centers and a baseball field. And it's going to be a place where they give you food and rations and coddle you. Oh, so lovely. But it's disgusting and sick. That's what it is. It's getting Americans and the world to accept less and less. And, we had this story last week. Lower CO2 emissions actually happening because of the bad economy, and that's a good thing. Mother Earth is safer now that the economy's bad. And that's what they want you to do. They want you to feel guilt for driving a car, having a barbecue, owning a big home. Having children. That's a big one. Having children. They don't want you to have 2 or 3 or 4 kids. One-child policies in China are right up their alleys. They love it. They love it. And now they're going to track and trace everything you do. It's going to be a lot easier for them to implement such policies. All right, so Rod Beckstrom, he resigns about 2 months ago. This is out of March 6th. As the cybersecurity chief. He was probably the guy that they were going to go to as the coordinator in this new organization. Let me read this. It's off MSNBC. In a blunt letter to Homeland Security, Secretary Janet Napolitano, Beckstrom complained about a shortage of money for the center and a clash over whether the National Security Agency should control cyber efforts. The role of the NSA in protecting domestic computer networks has triggered debate, particularly among privacy and civil liberties groups. We'll be back after this. It's the Alex Jones Show. I'm Jason Bermas sitting in. PrisonPlanet.tv, Infowars.com.